it's true what you said, like we're not taking into account here style. And generally when a client is looking for, like looking through those 5 price examples with a letterer, calligrapher, for example, they're looking at the style. Like in an ideal world, everybody is going to quote within that industry average. And then the client just goes after the style that they're looking for.
The Perspective Podcast is fuel for your mind and creative grind. Each week, we break down the art of healthy hustling, overcoming the inner critic, and growing your creative business. PC family, we have my good friend Becca Courtice, aka the Happy Ever Crafter, on again today. Welcome back to the Perspective Podcast show. I'm geeked to use this as a reason to catch up with you. What's new in your hood?
Oh man, I mean, so much, but also not that much. Like
we're living in weird times.
I know. It's just the strangest, like I feel like not much has changed because we've been stuck at home and whatever, but at the same time I've been building my business over here. So I feel like
what else you got to do besides build your business? You know, you got to stay home and get famous on TikTok for a little bit.
Yeah, you got me into TikTok.
And I stopped using TikTok. Like the pandemic hit and I had like kiddo and wifey home and like any extra bandwidth I had was gone. So I know for me, it's like, man, I've been home and grinding during pandemic, but at the same time, I feel more isolated than ever, even though I'm like more connected online than ever. Yeah. Like I don't have my normal extroverted people I can go and kick it with. Like I just feel like a hermit these days.
I know. Agreed. I'm also very extroverted. I mean, you and I met by being extroverts and just like walking up to each other at an event.
Like not having conferences right now is crushing my spirit. So like online virtual stuff, that's fine. But like, I'm that weird dude who likes to hug people and like really vibe off energy in a group and drink and dance and all that fun stuff. And like all the things I love, I can't do. I just got to sit online and coach and do podcasts, which is fun, but
I'm glad you have a podcast and I'm glad that I can be on this podcast. We can pretend we're in real life for at least like an hour here.
Well, it's probably too early, but man, I wish we would have like planned a little later. We can just like drink on this too and just totally get off topic. But for those who don't know about you, first, if they want to like go deeper and get to know you and more about your business and how you've grown this, check out episode 110, Growing and Engaged in Profitable Side Hustle, back in 2019. Holy fuck. Like literally 2 years ago as we put this out. But if you could just give us a brief Wikipedia page summary about yourself and people can go catch back up on that one. I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah. So my business is called the Happy Ever Crafter. Some people call me that sometimes, which always feels weird, but I mean, you can just call me Becca.
Well, that's Perspective Club. No, I'm Scotty.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, my thing is just mostly teaching modern calligraphy and hand lettering to mostly beginners. But I mean, once people get into my sphere, I just kind of teach them anything and everything that they request, things that like, you know, I learn new stuff just because I enjoy doing it. And then I start teaching it. And I just try and teach from an approachable, fun standpoint too. So nothing super serious on my end, but just giving people the opportunity to like explore their creativity and have fun with it and explore different things that you can do with your calligraphy and lettering, stuff like that. So yeah, I've been doing it since about 2015 and it's just really snowballed into something I could have never imagined. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, but I could go a lot longer on there if you want.
It's been pretty dope on like the outside looking in once I finally discovered you and your brand through Lewis Howes, of anything. Just seeing for your sake is the power of going all in on a passion project and then like niching down, listening to what people are wanting and what also speaks to you at the same time. So like this rotation of ask what people struggling with or listen and then serve them. And that's just been something that I can see you continue to repeat, scaling, and then like leveling up, giving people different access to wherever they are in their creative path. So it's super dope. Not only you are really good at calligraphy and educating, but you're really good at marketing. And that's why I have you on this show. And more specifically, like pricing, which we can get into in a little bit, but let's catch people up from everything that's happened in the last 2 years. Like so much has happened for me. So much has happened for you too. Something we didn't talk about in the pregame that we were talking about was like, it looks like your left hand that you had up there is like getting weighted down. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. So yeah, catch everyone else up over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I got engaged. That actually,
Woo.
yeah, that was like a year ago, but it feels like yesterday because ever since we got engaged, we've been locked down and we're still engaged. So that's good. Good
Is
news.
it weird being like, oh, my boyfriend, oh, fiance, huh? That was like a
Yeah.
very big,
Yeah.
weird transition. And then saying wifey,
Well,
that's just
and
normal.
what's even weirder is that now we're like delaying the wedding, right? And so I'm like, I've never really loved the idea of calling somebody a fiance. Like it feels too floofy for me. Like I'm black or white kind of person. And so I'm just like whenever I meet somebody, I just call him my husband already. Like we're
Oh,
there already.
shit, already right to it. Okay.
We've been together for long enough and I've known him since we were like toddlers. So we're
No
there.
shit.
But that's like the personal side. Business wise, what has changed? I mean, the audience keeps growing. YouTube has exploded for me. I think last time we spoke, I had just kind of started with YouTube and
It was like Happy Ever Crafter TV and some
yeah,
TikTok.
it still is. And then, yeah, TikTok, you got me to start on TikTok. I had a 6.5 million view video because of you, Scotty. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing.
I think my biggest one
Um,
was like 3,000.
it's crazy
I've been
because
posting in like a year.
if you go look at my TikTok, it's like this video has 3,000 views and this video has 6.5 million. It's like the algorithm on there is something else.
Yeah, it's weird. You can just like hit it hot out of nowhere. It's like
Yeah,
all of a sudden you just play the lottery a million times and you get broke, and all of a sudden you hit it big.
exactly. Like it wasn't even that good of a video, if I'm being honest. But so yeah, YouTube, TikTok, I mean, Instagram has just always been my thing, and kind of just like revamping my courses. So my standard one, Show Me Your Drills, which is like my main bread and butter for my business where I teach people calligraphy, is just always constantly evolving. It has been for 4 years, 5 years. And now I'm rewriting my pricing course, which is obviously what we're going to be talking about today a little bit more. But I wrote it a couple years ago and I had been doing pricing. I've been doing client work for a long time. So I always had people asking me about it. But a lot of things have changed in the way that I price and just like helping people get past a lot of the mindset things. So revamping that, which I'm really excited about. But I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more that's happened in the past 2 years, but I think that's like
That's the
it in a
big biz
nutshell.
related things, that people want to like catch up. So go back 110 and then you can hear the growth and then really dive into what we're talking about today. So stop what you're doing, go back, then listen to this and cue it up next. Get yourself a heavy dose of Becca. But one of the biggest struggles why I wanted you on here is because I've done a lot of pricing, I've done a lot of freelance stuff, but that's not my focus these days. My focus is truly coaching, mindset, clarity, confidence, direction, community, accountability. And from there, like I help freelancers, I help people monetize and grow profitable side hustles. But why not have someone who's like really in the mix of doing this often to speak toward it way better than I'm going to? So, yes, pricing, huge struggle. And I get this all the time for like listeners of the podcast, email subscribers, or just people in my private community. And more specifically, how they're starting with their side hustle, freelancing pursuits, and they want like a solid baseline on where to start to price or monetize their work. So, what I'm hoping that we can do today is go deeper on that mindset portion, because mindset's everything between the ears, and having confidence in it, and pack this episode with a ton of actionable steps, and then maybe foreshadow some potential next steps from there. You down with that?
Yeah, for sure.
So first off, let's go back in the time machine. I want to know, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What were some of your biggest struggles when it came to pricing your work and, figuring out what channels that you were going to monetize, whether it was like freelance, workshops, whatever.
Well, I started out the same way that I think most people do. And that is like, I was just doing it for fun. And then somebody magically one day was like, hey, this is a true story. Hey, I'm hosting my sister's baby shower and I need invites. And like, you have really cute writing and you're crafty. Can you make me 50 baby shower invites? And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Someone wants to pay me to be crafty. Like I was just doing this at night on the side of my full-time job. So this was like groundbreaking to me that somebody would ever ask me for that. And
Was this
uh,
pre moniker of Happy Ever Crafter?
oh yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah, of course I can do that for you. And I went all out, like made these invites all by hand, like hand cut the paper, added a little piece of vellum on it, like cut out a little baby like tutu thing and stuck some like fancy paper on it, and then did calligraphy on top, and then added all these extra embellishments, and then hand lettered the envelopes for this person and everything. And I charged her $2 a piece.
Oh my God. So you just made $100?
Because in my head, I was like, I just love doing this. Like, you could have asked me to do this for free and I would have done it anyway. But like the fact that you're willing to pay me, like, and I remember thinking, like, is she going to be willing to pay $100? Because I remember thinking she could just go to the store and buy these invites and whatever. And so that's how it started for me. And now looking back, I'm like, I would probably charge like $1,000 for that now.
Minimum.
Like, it's crazy. And so I think I started the exact same way that most people do, where it's a hobby. They just love doing it. They get excited. Then they don't understand that they need to price properly and like why that hurts them. And then just charging too low or just making a guess at, what it might cost them, taking like the amount, the cost of the paper and the cost of the ink, but not actually building in any price for like making money.
Thought of like how much materials cost me in the first place. Yeah. So really you made like what, 80 potentially or less?
I probably made 0 on that job, or minimum, like, or negative, honestly. So anyway, and I was doing all this reading yesterday about, what constitutes a hobby versus a business. And I think a lot of people just don't understand that. I get this comment all the time, or I see people in Facebook groups saying like, how should I charge for this? And then someone will tell them what to charge. They say, oh, you should charge $100. And then the person comes back and says, well, but I'm just doing this as a hobby. Like, I don't feel like I want to charge that much. I don't feel like I need to charge that much because it's just a hobby. And it's like, yeah, but the minute you're attempting to make money from it, it's not a hobby anymore. Now it's a business.
That's a side hustle business. Like yeah. It goes from, like, I like to talk about here, let's flip the switch from hobbyist to pro mindset. Like, it's time to be a fucking professional. Step your game up.
Well, and legally, like the IRS and the CRA, wherever you are, I'm in Canada, but legally, the minute you are purposefully trying to make money from whatever you're doing, it's a business. It's not a hobby anymore. That's how they actually qualify hobby versus business. So I just thought that was really interesting, because I get that comment all the time from people. And as soon as they're like, how do I price this? But I'm just a hobby. And it's like, no, if you're asking how to price it, you're not a hobby anymore.
I like that. And I think that's a lot of people in here.
But
sure. I think most people listening are like, I want to go from hobbyist to side hustler to potentially one day full-time doing my thing. So hopefully that's where you and me can step in and be the guide and be like, okay, here's the mindset you need to start walking into.
Exactly. Because so much of it is mindset. And if you don't get through the mindset stuff at the start, you'll always be waffling on your prices. You'll never feel confident with it. And you'll always just act like it's a hobby. And then one day down the line, realize that your pricing as a hobby is making you not profitable, which means you're never going to build your business. You're never going to be able to accelerate your business.
You start falling victim to that starving artist mentality. Like, you should not feel bad about charging money for your services. You shouldn't feel bad about it. They're coming to you for a reason. You're providing value. But I think a lot of it stems from someone not understanding the value and not knowing how to communicate it and just not believing in themselves and their ability.
Totally. Yep.
So is there any other massive struggles that are just like, okay, these are what people tell me the most, and that way we can start diving into some of them?
Yeah. I mean, one of the most common ones is, like, once somebody knows they're not a hobby, they're a business, they're like trying to get clients or trying to get money. One of the biggest ones I hear too, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is like, I don't get that many clients approaching me. And so when I do, I'm afraid to quote high and lose the job or not get the job. Like, I hear that constantly, and it's a confidence thing. It's the biggest struggle. In fact, like the other week I did a survey of my audience, and I asked them, what is your number one struggle with pricing? And they all said confidence. I mean, 95% of them said confidence. They're scared to say a big price. They're scared to lose the job because they price too high. All different confidence
scared of the
issues.
rejection part of it too.
Yeah. And it's that you said it at the beginning too, that like you're doing more coaching stuff and mindset stuff and not so much pricing, but it's the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you position yourself in the market when you're just getting started? Like, you're fresh. Man. And then maybe like if you're someone who's been doing it for a while and you're getting a little bit more demand.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we start with the beginners, I think that's a really common struggle too, is like, I don't want to, like, I'll learn how much I should be pricing, but I don't want to price that much yet because I'm brand new and Scotty's been in there doing it for 15 years and he's going to be pissed off if I try and charge the same amount as him because I'm not doing it as long, which is fair. Like you
It's a
shouldn't be
competitive ass
charging.
world.
Right. And it's fair that you would be worried about that and you wouldn't want to piss off the people who came before you and all of that. But like, yeah, realistically, you shouldn't be charging the same amount as somebody who's been doing it for 20 years. But at the same time, there's a difference between charging lower than that person and charging too low and screwing over the whole industry and yourself in the future, right? So, I mean, it's like if we use an example that's unrelated to lettering or whatever, let's say we're talking about wedding planners. Okay, so you're a bride. Okay, you're a groom.
Hey, no, we can go with the bride aspect. I'm cool with role play.
Okay, you're a bride or a groom and you're shopping for a wedding planner because you're getting married. And you have, you find 5 wedding planners in your city, and let's pretend all is equal. They're all saying they provide the exact same service, which is rare. They usually have different packages and whatever, but let's say they all have the same service. You find 5 of them, you compare all the prices. Wedding planner number 1 is charging $25,000. Wedding planner number 2 is charging 8. Number 3 is charging 7. Number 4 is charging 6. So those 3, like 8, 7, 6, they're all pretty close in the ballpark. And then wedding planner number 5 is charging like $1,000 or under $1,000. You look at these prices and you're like, okay, wedding planner number 1 is charging way too much for me. They're probably in the business of working with luxury wedding clients. 3, 4, or 2, 3, and 4 are all around the same ballpark. So you look at it and you're like, okay, that's probably like the average for the industry because I'm seeing like most people are in that ballpark. That's probably a fair-ish price. And then you look at number 5 and they're, charging $1,000 or less, and you're like, well, what's wrong with what's wrong with their service? Like, why are they charging so low? Are they brand new? Are they not going to do as good of a job? Are they flaky? Do they not have experience? Like you start
It's
wondering
the opposite
why.
of positioned as premium when you
Right.
have that bottom feeder mentality.
Right. Meanwhile, like let's say you were wedding planner number 5 and you're like, I'm just charging low because I'm new and I want to get clients. I will do such a good job. I'll probably do a better job than these people above me because I'm going to try so much harder. Like, you would do a great job, but you've unintentionally priced yourself out of the equation because you're too low and people don't value what you're doing, right?
It's hard to take someone serious that way.
Yes, exactly. So you're unintentionally losing the jobs, even though you're the cheapest. I mean, there's always going to be people who go for the cheapest, but they're the bottom feeders, they're the bargain hunters. And is that really the kind of client you want to attract, right?
And they're probably going to try to talk you down even more and wrangle you like they're at like what's the place? Like oh my God, not an auction, flea market, they're trying to just get bottom dollar and get the most out of you. Like,
exactly. And so I think a lot of beginners fall into the trap of saying, well, those bargain hunters are better than no clients at all. But really, are they? Because like if you ask any service provider who their worst clients have been, and it always is the ones who paid the least also. Like you end up working more and going through more crap for people who aren't paying as much, and you just end up resenting it. You're pissed off about the work. It doesn't make good like portfolio content. It just never works out well.
And then you go to it defeated, like maybe freelance just isn't for me.
Exactly. So like if you can't charge super high because you're not experienced yet, but you can't charge super low because then you are ending up screwing yourself, then what do you do instead as a beginner, right? So to me, the answer is just trying to be in that range of those wedding planners 2, 3, and 4, between like 8,000, 7,000, and 6,000. And that's different for every industry, obviously, but like trying to do your research and figure out what the industry average is and fall within that. And whether or not that means that you're going to go to the low end of that industry average because you're brand new and it makes you feel more comfortable, then that's fair. But you have to also remember that maybe the one wedding planner above you is just going a little bit lower than the one above them. And they're going a little bit lower than the one above them, right? So you don't actually really know what anybody's pricing is based off of. And so just trying to fit into that average, that's where I tell people to start off with positioning themselves. Not too high that you're considered a luxury product, not too low that you're pricing yourself out of the equation totally. And you also have to remember that if you're aiming to be in that industry average, you have to be able to deliver on it. Like you can't put yourself in the industry average and not be able to deliver on it, because then you're watering down the whole industry, making everybody look bad. So if you don't feel like you can provide, if you don't feel confident that you can deliver on an industry average, you know, amount of work for what you're worth, then maybe it's not actually time for you to be starting to charge for your work yet. And that's like an honest truth. Maybe you need to do more free for friends and family, or charities or anything like that. Those are great opportunities to, refine your work and stuff. And then that stuff will make you feel more confident. You'll price yourself properly and you'll get better clients, and you'll just like gradually build up that confidence.
And develop your style and figure out what your unique differentiator is. If this is what the typical market standard is, what are they all doing? And how can I like bring in my secret sauce? What's that unique wrinkle that I added? Me, for example, like a lot of people are like, don't ever do free work. And I'm like, dude, I did my first 2 murals for free because I wanted to do murals. I wasn't getting any jobs. I needed to show I could do the work. I got a dope ass opportunity for a pizza place. Then it led to more murals where I'm like, okay, a minimum mural was $3,000. It led to live events. It led to more word of mouth and getting the next job that wasn't even mural related when I was into freelance. So I wouldn't have been able to do murals or charge multiple thousands if it wasn't for me doing free work in the first place to even get
Exactly.
that confidence.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. Where, like, if we go back to the bargain hunter people, it's better for you to just do a free job and get it a good portfolio piece, or get good experience, or get good feedback from a client, than do like $100 job for a client who's not actually going to write you a testimonial or post pictures of the work or anything like that. Like, it's so much better to just do a fully, like, do the job for free, be fully invested in it, and get good content out of it, than
Because
have
then
to,
if you
like,
undercharge, then you're going to have that same client who goes to one of those middle tier. Well, I just found someone who did it for $100, and they're
yeah,
going to be like, fuck you.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's true what you said, like, we're not taking into account here style. And generally, when a client is looking through those 5 price examples with a letterer, calligrapher, for example, they're looking at the style. Like, in an ideal world, everybody is going to quote within that industry average. And then the client just goes after the style that they're looking
Yeah.
for. And so that's where it becomes really more important to differentiate yourself on style than on price.
Yeah, instead of like I've had people being like, okay, um, this style hasn't really been taken off. It's unique to me and great. I'm like, you haven't been doing it that long for one, to like train behavior to be known for something. They're like, should I just like scale back? I see these are more trendy or what other people are doing. And I'm like, are you trying to fit in? Or are you trying to stand out?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long game thing. And I mean, when you end up having a style that is so unique, it'll be sought after. And that's when you can start pricing premium, because no one else can do it like you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's truly a slow and steady long-term grind. It's a patience thing. This shit doesn't happen overnight like a 6.3 million TikTok video that you put out there, you know?
That did literally happen overnight, though, Scotty.
So let's talk about confidence and the value you provide, and then how do you communicate it? I know this was a hard thing for me, and I'm just within the last 2 years. I'm 6 years into Perspective Collective, but I was doing 4 years before that, just trying to find my groove post college since 2010, kind of dating myself there. But I spent the last years just really experimenting, exploration, and failing time and time again. And just in the last 2 years of Perspective, I've really like, okay, here's the value. Here's who my perfect person is, or perfect client, perfect listener, perfect follower, perfect whoever, and how can I understand the value and speak toward it in their language and then communicate it confidently myself with some conviction. Confidence is the main thing your followers struggle with, or your customers struggle with. So dive a little bit deeper. How do you become more confident? How do you understand the value you provide?
Yeah, I mean, well, we touched on it a minute ago with determining what your style is and what your value is based on, like, nobody else being able to do that. So really leaning into what it is about your style, or we're talking specifically to artists here. I imagine this is going to hit home for everybody, but yeah, like leaning into that, honing your style, making sure that it's not similar to someone else's. That's going to immediately position you higher, and you can have confidence in the fact that someone who's coming to you is seeking you out because no one else can do it like you. But this also comes back to the question earlier where I said, like, one of the biggest struggles is, when people say, I don't get many clients approaching me and I'm afraid to quote too high. That's more of a, like, again, a mindset thing. First of all, if you're desperate to get the job, if you're desperate for the money, and I think this is going to resonate with you, what I'm about to say, Scotty, and probably you've said this a million times. If you're desperate for that and you need the money and you're desperate enough that you're willing to drop your price just because you need to get the job, then maybe you need to rethink having this as your full-time gig right now. Like realistically, anytime you're quoting, you shouldn't feel like I need this job to put dinner on the table for my family. Like if that's the case, then you should probably be doing this as a side hustle. And you're like, yeah, drop the mic. Because there's so much value in having it as a side hustle. And you and I both did it as a side hustle for a long time, where you're not relying on your art or your quoting or your confidence in quoting to put dinner on the table for your family. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I feel so many people buy into this over glorified full time. If I'm not full time, no one's going to take me seriously. And I'm like, no, like I'm going to take you more seriously as a professional creative if you can grind a day job and slow and steady build your craft on the side. Like having that safety net is so helpful.
Well, and
And
who are you going to take more seriously? The person who's doing it as a side hustle, but values their work and is confident enough to charge full price, or
not
the
scared to
person
say
who's doing it
no to a shitty opportunity.
exactly, or the person who is desperate is doing it full time, and like you can smell it on them that they just need this job, so you're not going to agree to their higher
Oh, you
prices,
smell
right? Like
desperate. Just like, ooh, what fragrance was that? That's some desperation.
desperation, the new fragrance.
Like those fancy cologne commercials. Oh, that's hilarious.
No, but it's true. Like you can, and I think the other common misconception here is that if you're doing it as a side hustle, you can't charge full-time rates, which is it's totally bullshit. Like if you're doing it part-time versus doing it full-time, you should be charging the same amount of work for the same amount of work. Like if you were part-time, I was full-time, and we were both going to do the same mural, should you get paid less than me because you're doing it part-time? No. If anything, you should get paid more than me because you don't have as much time as me to do it.
It's like my time is more valuable and limited, so I'm going to charge more for my service. That's how it was. Like I was working when I was doing murals or freelance as a side hustle. I would have to come into certain places at like 5 a.m. to work before they opened up, so then I could go to my day job, and then go super early on weekends before my family was up, so I could grind. I'm like, the time is very valuable.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm only doing this as a side hustle, so I can't charge full-time rates, which is not true. You should be charging the same amount no matter what your goal is, to take it full-time, to keep it as a side hustle. I don't care. Same pricing.
I think that is so clutch. If you don't take yourself seriously, you can't expect anyone else to. Like literally, the world is a mirror. It's going to reflect what you believe and think about yourself over time. So if you come into this as a professional, regardless of a day job, mindset is everything. People are slowly getting online. Like I know some of the biggest people, like Nick Slater is a behemoth Goliath illustrator. That dude still rocks a day job. You think people don't take him seriously as like an illustrator? Like he's one of the best in the business, and he's loves having a day job. There's nothing wrong with having a day job.
Yeah, 100%. And that it just answers the question about confidence. Like you're going to feel not confident when you're desperate for the job. If you're desperate for the job, then you need to rethink that, because you can smell it.
Oh my God. We got to make some like episode artwork and like draw a cologne bottle that just says desperation.
Need like a nose with the word desperation
Yeah.
coming out.
Oh, some dope calligraphy from you.
Yeah.
Another thing I believe in, like communicating your value. What's the benefit that your work provides? Like anybody can do calligraphy, anybody can do freelance, but what's that unique value? And I said this the other day to a group coaching call. Like I'm not hiring a plumber to come fix my pipes, just to fix my pipes during the winter when it's -20 out here in Iowa. I'm hiring him to fix it so it doesn't freeze, so I have peace of mind when I'm sleeping at night. I'm paying the benefit of a plumber is for peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I think understanding the value, maybe it's harder in the beginning, but why does your work provide value to this bride? Are you providing peace of mind? Are you providing value in the form of status? Like she feels like she is a badass and getting a way more doper product and experience for whoever is attending the wedding or experience whatever that you create. So it's like, can you speak to that end value benefit of what you provide? I think that's a struggle for a lot of people.
Well, yeah. And I mean, your original question when we got on this topic was, how do you communicate that? And I think that it's a lot easier than people think. Like, okay, standard example. You do, let's stick with the wedding example. You do a seating chart for a bride, and you go on your Instagram account where you share your work and you just post a picture of this seating chart. And you're like, here's a seating chart I did for Sarah last year, whatever, leave it at that. That's not communicating any sort of value to anybody.
The marketing switch has not been flipped for that.
No. So flip the switch. And instead of just saying, here's a seating chart, tell the story about the seating chart. Tell the story about working with Sarah as the bride. Tell the story about, the guest walking in and it being so easy for them to find their table because your writing was so perfect and whatever. Like, or share a testimonial where Sarah said something about the seating chart. Like, share anything about that client process that puts a future client in their shoes and communicates to them like why this would be a valuable project. And a wedding seating chart is like only so valuable because it's just for this one bride. But like, let's say it's a logo, like share the process of how you came up with that logo and how much it's benefited the business since they've had it. Like little tiny things you can share the same picture, change the caption. Like that's how you communicate it.
And I label providing value within your work or helping others see value in it falls into 3 easy buckets, trying to simplify it. Are you entertaining? Are you educating? Are you inspiring someone? So storytelling, whatever it is. And then also like, say your Instagram bio, that's like your business card or your website hero. I'm a wedding calligrapher. Okay, that's fine. There's a lot of you, but like, what's the benefit? Who you are, what you do, why I should care. So I'm a wedding calligrapher that helps brides maintain their sanity and just look dope and I guess to flex on their friends. Like it's a status thing or something like that. Like how can you speak towards like, here's a end result benefit of why my wedding calligraphy provides that end result that someone's looking for. Like it's more than just like, hey, they want this done. It's like there's a reason they want this done specifically by you, to be pretty, to look awesome, to stand out, whatever it is.
Well, and exactly like, and going back again to that same question where people say, I don't get many clients, so I don't want to lose them. And it's like, if a client found you through a post like that, you're not going to lose them because of your price. They already know they want to work with you, versus if they just Google you and find you and know nothing about you or your process or your value, that's when you might lose them. And that's when you'll feel less confident. But if you've built up that base and you can prove to them the confidence and you can prove to them the value of your work, then there's way less question in your mind that you're going to lose this person by quoting too high.
Right. And it's like, from your standpoint, you're not just teaching someone calligraphy because they want to learn calligraphy. There's a reason they want to learn calligraphy. So what's the reason behind the reason? What's the goal behind the goal? Maybe it's because they've always had a dream to learn it and they want to build a profitable business around it. So you're a calligraphy educator who helps calligraphers build profitable businesses around their craft. That would be a value proposition. So, okay. What was the next thing? So let's pivot. And I know you have some experience talking about hourly rates. And for me, that's in a world of like, I don't always share an hourly rate. To me, that's more private, but I'm open to hearing more from a different angle.
No, I honestly love that you just said that, because that's like going to underpin the whole thing. My opinion is that you should know your hourly rate, but that doesn't mean you're going to use it. That doesn't mean you're going to tell anybody.
Then I'm aligned, very aligned.
Yeah. So my whole thing is like, and I mean, if you're saying you're aligned, you know exactly what I'm going to say, but a lot of people, and beginners especially, they'll just figure out what their hourly rate is, whether or not they actually calculate it properly, or they just pull a number out of thin air based on what someone else told them, and then quote every job hourly. Someone comes to you and says, I want a mural done. You're like, oh, okay, it'll probably take me 8 hours. 8 hours times my hourly rate. Here's the price. And it's like, no, you can't just do that. But knowing your hourly rate is like, you can have that in the back of your mind so that you can constantly cross-reference it with your ultimate price that you're giving to a client. So if I tell the client the mural is going to cost them $3,000, and in my head, I know that my hourly rate is $50 an hour, I can do the math and make sure that if I'm spending this amount of hours on it, I can't do that math in my head, like on the spot here, but you know what I'm saying? Like I can at least cross-reference and make sure that I'm still profitable if I'm spending a certain number of hours. And if I'm going above that number of hours, then it's not profitable anymore, because I know what my hourly rate should be. And I should at least be hitting that minimum every time. So yeah, I mean, I think a big problem with hourly rates, especially with beginners, is that they think of it as like an hourly rate being the same as your wage at a job. So let's
Yeah.
say you're working as a interior designer and you're making $20, like they're billing you at $20 an hour. Then you leave to do freelance interior design and you're like, okay, well, I should just charge $20 an hour. But you're forgetting that the firm you were working for pays for the overhead, they pay for the expenses, they pay for the heat in the building that you're in, they pay for the internet, they paid for your phone, they paid
Your
for
Adobe
everything.
Creative Cloud and everything,
Exactly.
your
Yes.
insurance.
Yes. And so people leave that kind of job and forget about all these expenses, where like your wage and your hourly rate as a freelancer are like completely different things. You should not be thinking of those even in the same realm. So it's about calculating your actual hourly rate and then having it in the back of your mind when you're working on projects. There's like I could go on forever about hourly rate and when to use hourly rate versus fixed rate versus value-based pricing, like all the things. We could get so deep into it, but yeah, I
Is that
mean,
what you get deeper into your course? Is like those different levels of it?
yeah, we talk a lot about mindset and all these different like nuanced things for certain projects in the course. But speaking of hourly rate, I also have, and we haven't even talked about the course or the webinar or anything yet.
We'll
But
end it with like the webinar and
yeah,
gradually be like, yo, if you found a lot of value, here's like the next steps. Like the whole goal is more just to like dive into the mindset of someone listening. We're not here to just pitch you like, hey, Becca's on only to sell her course. It's like, no,
yeah,
let's address a huge topic right now that people struggle with. And if you want more, here's the next step.
yeah. Well, yeah, I have a course. We talk about all of this. I have a webinar. We talk about specifically hourly rate and like help people actually determine their hourly rate and do that calculation instead of just pulling a number out of thin air, and like with a worksheet and how to fill it out and everything. But the general idea behind your hourly rate is that you take your ideal salary number, whether or not you're doing this part-time or full-time, whatever. Every time I say part-time or full-time, I almost always say it the other way, where it would be fart time or pull time.
Oh, another reason why we get along so well. Dad jokes and puns galore. Like,
Literally,
yeah.
every time I say it, I like laugh in my head. So I just had to say it out loud. But whether
Part-time, fart
fart time
pie,
or full time.
fart time or
Okay.
pull time.
So whether you're doing it fart time or pull time, it doesn't matter. You figure out what your hourly or what your annual salary, what you want it to be in your head. So if you're doing it part time, you want to make an extra 10 grand, great. If you're doing it full time, you want to make 100 grand, great. Doesn't matter. Take that number, then determine what your actual expenses are. And this is tricky for people when they're first starting out because they don't know them, but you can research like what industry averages are, like, you know, what your average cell phone bill would be, what your average internet bill would be, things like that. Add them all up. And again, if you take the webinar, there's a calculation. We have the whole like list of all the things you should fill out. And then you determine what your actual working hours are for the year. So take out your vacation hours. People always forget about that. Take out like statutory holidays. People always forget about those. We were just talking about this, Scotty, how like you and I always work through holidays because as an entrepreneur, you forget about them.
What's a good Friday, right? Good Friday is it's a good Friday to work. Yeah.
Exactly. But realistically, if you're calculating your hourly rate, you take those things out. So again, figure out your annual salary, figure out your expenses, and then figure out what your actual working hours are or billable hours are. And then the calculation is just your salary plus your expenses divided by your working hours. And that's your hourly rate. Whereas a lot of people will just, look at what the industry average is and figure it out. But if you really did that math, a lot of the time that ends up being less than minimum wage for a lot of people. So long story short, get that hourly rate, actually calculate it, have it in the back of your mind. But it doesn't mean that you're going to a client and saying, yep, I can do that for 25 bucks an hour. Like that's never helpful.
Yeah. And how I've always operated when I was doing this, you can still have your flat, you can still have your private hourly. Mine was always built on a baseline of like, here's my private hourly rate, here's my projected time, plus I bake in some more because things always take 3 times as much longer. Here's how much supplies will run me. And at the end, like, how much value is this providing? Is this a bigger thing like a Google, or is this like a local mom and pop shop who aren't a franchise. They have a one-stop location. So like, what's that value? Is it going to drive more traffic? Are they going to profit off this? So there's a
Mhm.
lot of different elements. And that's like in the world of value-based pricing, which I know you'd cover more, but hopefully just that little baseline formula can also help someone like, oh shit, there's more to even that. Okay.
So much more. Like in the course, we have a whole section about mindset. And then we have a whole section about like all the different variables that you could have to run into for certain types of projects and how to account for them. And then we have the actual price lists, but it's like the stuff at the start is the most important, like getting your head around when you should use your hourly rate, when you shouldn't use your hourly rate, what the other options are, and like what the benefits are of each one. It's just like there's so much to it. So it's so hard when somebody says, like, how much should I charge for this? And it's like, well, what do you want your salary to be that year? What are your expenses?
Right.
What are
It's
your
not
material?
just a
Like,
clear cut. You can
yeah,
give like that baseline thing that I said, but you still need to go back and reverse and do the work. And that's the thing. People say they want something, yet they don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the nitty gritty. They're just like, I just want to draw and I just want a manager and everything. I want representation. I'm like, well, you still got to like understand it more in the beginning to like learn it yourself so you can understand the lingo and the business side of things versus like having that starving artist mentality. It's you got to flip the switch, the business marketing switch if you want to
yeah,
be taken seriously.
totally.
Let's talk about the really, really tricky stuff
Mhm.
of friends and family discount for exposure. Here's some exposure bucks. How do you
Yeah.
navigate this? Or how do you guide or advise someone who's just like, well, my friend just asked me for a discount. What do I do?
Well, yeah. Okay. So we're starting with the dreaded friends and family discount then. Okay. We already touched on it earlier, the way that I do this, and I'm curious if you do it the
Let's
same way.
keep touching.
So my go-to is full price or free. Yeah, your thumbs up. Okay, cool. We're on the same page. So, and that's the thing about pricing too, is like you can talk to 10 different artists and everybody does it slightly differently, but like a lot of these mindset things are pretty standard. Once you get them, you're like, yeah, I'm on board with that. So full price or free basically means if my best friend or my mom, friends or family, but like closest friends, come to me and ask me for a discount, if I care about that person enough to do a discount, then I'm actually just going to do it all in fully free. Versus if a friend of a friend or like a distant cousin or
An
somebody
acquaintance.
somebody who thinks they deserve a discount just because your friends on Facebook comes and asks me for a discount and I don't feel like it's my best friend or my family, then it's full price. There's no in between, there's no wishy-washiness. And like the best part about this is that both of those people are valuing what you're doing at full price because I would invoice them both the same way. You're going to get an invoice that says what it would be worth. It's just that the people on this side who are getting it for free are going to have it totaled to zero at the bottom. So they're going to know, oh my God, Becca just gave me a $1,400 gift. And this person is going to know the charge is $1,400. So that it's valued the same. But the best part about this whole thing is that there's no gray zone for who you do free and who you do full price for, because there's a very clear line. And if you're on this side of the line, you get it for free. If you're on this side of the line, you get it full price. It's not like, yeah, a distant friend comes and you have to feel awkward because they think they deserve a discount. And you're just like, no, it's my policy is like full price. I don't do discounts.
I think the most important thing you said, if you're doing it's either black or white, this or that, is making sure that person who gets the homie hookup knows the value. Like you have to invoice that person. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the most important thing. People might look over and be like, "Oh, you're close, homie. I got you on this," and they don't even know what they're truly getting. They're not
Yeah.
even gonna like fully appreciate it.
And it feels awkward to do that. I'm not going to lie, like to give your best friend
To
an
your
invoice
mom,
or
that one
whatever. But
might be
like,
hard for me. I don't know if I could do that to my mom. I'm not
I mean,
gonna.
she birthed you. It might
Yeah,
be a
I
little
came
different, but
from
like,
her.
yeah. But no, but it's true. Like if and it's as simple as like if you're doing a seating chart for your best friend's wedding, like just stick the invoice on the back of it. Don't even say anything. Just make sure it's there and it's totaled to zero, and they're gonna look at it and be like, "Whoa,
And a
wow,
little XOXO by it. So I
yeah,
want to throw like a caveat in here. So say you had like your tiered packaging or something like that. Here's your flat pricing. This is what you do. But someone just like couldn't afford that, instead of like reducing the rates to give them what they want, can you scale back that package more? So like, hey, this is what you have. okay, well, this is what we can do. We can like scale back some of these other items that would normally be a part of this package. Like I have friends who do that with like the logo and brand identity world. Like, okay, you can't reach this minimum for this tier, but I can take some things away, like these graphic kits. Here's something else. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
100%.
Okay.
That's the only thing I would recommend. Like a lot of my students will say that, they gave a quote to the client and then the client came back and said like, oh, that's out of our budget or whatever. Can you go down $200? And it's like, no, I can't go down $200 because if you do that, you're devaluing yourself and you're letting them walk all over you. But you say, I can't go down $200, but I was going to do this. I can just like do a couple less graphics, or like we can
round
use
of revisions reduced, or just something like find a way.
We can use a cheaper type of wood for your seating chart. We can, like here are the things we can do. At the same time too, like sometimes I'll even, when the person reaches out to me, depending what kind of client it is, I'll ask them right off the bat, like, what's your budget for this? And that doesn't necessarily always mean that that's their top of their budget. Like you can usually try and go a little bit higher than that or work with them or whatever. But if you feel like it's a client that you really want to do the work for and they don't have like a perfectly clear vision of whatever they want to do, you can ask them what their budget is and then work within it. For example, like I recently had a local university reach out to me and ask me to run a workshop for them. And I know that universities don't typically have that big of a budget to bring in somebody to do a workshop. Like I can't be charging what I normally charge for my private workshops, but I really wanted to do it for them. So I just said, what's your budget? And like, I can create a lesson within that fits, that makes sense for you and makes sense for me.
Tailor-made to 100% fit. Yeah. If it's something that really aligns and you don't want to smell like the shitty fragrance of desperation. So before we wrap things up and I tell people where they can find you, I'll let people know like the next step of when to expect this webinar. And if they're listening to this later, where can they like sign up for a wait list, or, how can they find you afterwards?
Yeah, the webinar, you can access it anytime. It's just thehappievercrafter.com/pricing. And it's all about how to actually find your hourly rate. We're walking you through it, giving you the steps and a handout so you can actually fill it out and do the calculation and stuff and feel a million times better about it. But we also get more into depth about like when not to use your hourly rate and when to use it stuff. So you can go to that anytime. But if you're a letterer or calligrapher, we also have a full course at panicfreepricing.com. And I got some pricing stuff on YouTube too, thehappievercrafter.tv.
No, super helpful. Super, super helpful. And hopefully people are just like, whoa, my wheels are spinning right now. I've been doing it all wrong. I've been listening to Joe Schmo down the street and be like, oh, $50 for a logo. So thank you. Sorry, go on.
I just think ultimately, like, if you're even thinking about it at all, like you're probably feeling overwhelmed. Even just hearing us talk about this, we threw a lot of information out, like sort of all over the place in this episode. But like, if you're even listening to an episode like this or getting little tidbits, you're already way ahead of a lot of people who are just throwing numbers out there like I did with the baby shower invites and whatever. But long story short, like you're always going to be tweaking it. You're always going to be refining it. And you're definitely going to make mistakes. So just roll with it, figure it out as you go, and just get better at it every time. And that's all you can do.
Yep. Well, where can people go to follow you online and support you?
You can find me at The Happy Ever Crafter on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. And again, YouTube, thehappievercrafter.tv.
And the TikToks, right?
And TikTok if you want to, but it's pretty hit or miss on there.
And you have some Facebook groups too? Or a Facebook group community that I can plug for you?
If anybody wants to join the community, you can just look up The Happy Ever Crafters with an S on Facebook and join there if you want to.
Cool. Well, it's been great using this as an excuse to catch up. We stay in touch, a couple of times throughout the year, always keeping a pulse on each other. So just know I'm incredibly grateful. Hopefully we can like link up at a conference again one time soon and just dish out horrible dad jokes. Have a couple drinks. And hopefully by the next time I have you on the podcast, you're married and life is somewhat back to normal. Okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. Have an incredible day and let's keep in touch.
Thanks, Scotty. Talk to you soon.
Peace. Thanks again for listening. It'd be awesome if you took the time to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let the comment below so we can connect. Again, if you want to catch a shout out as a future listener of the week, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and give it a rating and review.